So, you talked about the bias, the apparent bias with Alissa Sherry. When I've watched Judge Catherine Mousey and when I've looked at some of her stuff, I mean, if you look at her website, she's very out there. She's a Democrat. She's this, she's that. She's going to oppose Abbott. I mean, she's, does one of these things. She looks like she is a very committed feminist. And I'm not against all feminists, but hardcore feminism, I think, is bad. But anyway, in the courts right now, in the area that you are, it's Travis County, right? Almost all the judges are women judges. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes I get the impression that because the judges that are the females in these positions, they may be a little bit more on the feminist side. They've had to overcome obstacles, they've surmounted obstacles, and they've used that as we've been able to do these things. Would they not naturally have a bias against you? And then if you have a child custody report that is also biased against you, to me it seems like it's very difficult for you to get due process that you were talking about and an impartial judge. If you've got a judge who may already be biased and then have a child custody evaluator who is biased, and then you have an attorney who is taking this child custody evaluation report, which has a lot of questionable stuff in and trying to use the evidence against you, it's almost like they're building an argument against you that doesn't exist. And how do you defend yourself against inaccuracies and unfactual assertions? Does that question make sense?
It does, and I think I think my history is that professionally, again, for over 25 years, I've always advocated for kids. And my history is I had a very strong, positive relationship with my own father and my mother, but obviously two different types of relationships, as with kids in marriage situations. So because of that positive relationship, for me, it's an innate responsibility to be a parent, regardless of the parental situation. For me, it's a responsibility to give our child the best possible, I don't like the word outcome, but it is the best possible outcome in an objective sense.
But I want to say that just watching your interaction, it's more than a responsibility to you. It's a joy and a privilege.
Oh, it's an exhausting blessing. I call it an exhausting blessing. So I love our child. And, one of the things that was in the report from Dr. Sherry is the only reason Dr. O'Connor stayed is for control. And there's no substantial basis for that statement whatsoever. And I was never asked about why did I stay. And there was never any verification of the facts surrounding why I stayed in the situation. But I chose to because that is inherent for me. And I want to be a parent to this child, so our child doesn't go without one of his parents.
I think the importance.
I think it's important to say, because you were talking about feminism. What I think is really interesting is the word equality is never used. So I agree with equality. I agree with equal opportunity. I'm a proponent of that. I'm not a proponent of using the word a masculinist or a feminist. I don't agree with those words because each of those words can have several different meanings.
Yes, exactly.
But I agree with equality, and I think that my professional life has been devoted to offering the best that we can for children. And as a father, a parent, that's what I would like for our child. So her statement is a false statement. And one of the experts, I don't think I'm not going to comment on that, but going to the judiciary, a non-biased tribunal. I mean, it brings into question, if you see advertisements that are suggesting that there's a bias or bringing that into question, the primary words are is a reasonable suspicion of bias.
Right.
Does it bring to a reasonable person the question of bias?
Right.
And if it does, then you have to question whether that person should be in that role.
Yes.
And there's a confusion between what's going on politically and what their role is once they're sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
But this is the process because these people are elected officials.
Yeah.
And once they're elected, now they're state employees. And
Yeah.
they have a role to be in a non-biased position.
Yeah.
So in that particular case, when it was advertised that, we were fathers' rights advocates, card-carrying members of fathers' rights groups, that was completely a false statement.
Yeah.
But it was utilized to inflame the court.
Yeah.
From what we could see, the disconnect between the evidence that was presented and the rulings, it appeared to be. And so I think we went in the proper direction.
Okay.
Now, it may not have been liked, but we think it was in the proper direction.
Yeah.